Well, hello, friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Workshop, coming to you live this evening. And we've got a lot of ground to cover, and I hope you're going to enjoy what we're about to embark on. We're going to be talking about the Nashville number system. We're going to have to set the stage for that and bring you into it a little bit slower and not just jump right into the middle of it. Before we get into it, I'll just point out that the two mandolins you see sitting back here are my twin mandolin project. They've been drying for about 7 days, and so I thought I'd set them out on display for this evening. They're going to dry for another 10 or 12 days before I buff them out and actually set them up. So that's part of the reason you're not seeing any other videos on that right now. So anyway, we're going to... It's looks like it's almost 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, what we're about to embark on is the Nashville number system the way I think about it. It's different, I think, than the way most people think about it. However, you get to the same result. So it's not different, it's just the way you think about it is what's different. And I think that that may help a lot of you because I'm a very simple-minded person. Meaning that I always like to do things the easiest, simplest, least complex way. I try to do that in everything in life pretty much. The way I repair instruments, whatever. You know, it doesn't matter. So I try to apply that common sense, easy way approach. And I think that's what you'll see here with the Nashville number system. And I think that's what's going to help you out the most. Now, I will tell you that the information that I'm sharing with you this evening is available for purchase on my DVDs. I have a 3 DVD set that's on the mandolin on learning the Nashville number system. Will it help you on the guitar? Possibly. We'll talk about some of that this evening, and I can see how, and I will try to point out some of the things that we're talking about tonight. I'll try to point them out on guitar as well. I have a guitar standing by over here in the corner, and as a matter of fact, it's going to be in a future DVD. As a matter of fact, it's going to be on a future video on YouTube later on. It's a repair job. But anyway, let's get started. Now, the first thing I want to tell you, and this is the hardest part of the whole thing, and it's so simple, but yet it's so difficult. And that is, what I would like for you to do is to try to pretend like you don't know anything about music at all. Some of you are brand new at it, and that'll be easy. Others have been playing for 20 years or 30 years, and you're going to try to compare everything I say to what you already know. And I would hope you don't do that. In other words, try to just hit it with an open mind. Just listen to what I say, take it for face value, and learn it like it's brand new, like you don't know anything about what we're talking about. I know that's next to impossible for most people, but give it a shot. You'll get more out of this if you can do that, because it's a different way to think about it. That's the whole point of this. If I was going to tell you something you already know, there wouldn't be any point in it at all. So try to think about this in this different light. Okay, that's the first thing. All right, let's see. The second thing we want to do is, before we can get into the Nashville number system, especially for the mandolin, we need to show you the chords and how the chords work. And I have to explain a couple things to you also, and that is that the chord structure I use is not the easiest. It's this crazy wild chord here. It's all 4 fingers. So you got your 2 fingers down here on the bottom 2 strings. And I use this mandolin specifically because it has the dots, and hopefully that'll help you. So you got your middle finger on the bottom set of strings there on the 3rd fret, your first finger in the 2nd fret on the 2nd set of strings. Then you skip a fret and you come up here to the 3rd string with your 3rd finger. And then finally you put your 4th finger on the 4th set of strings and skip a fret again. So it's not an easy chord to do. That chord, anywhere you put it down, is going to play a chord on your mandolin. We will have to learn what those letters are here in a minute. Then you can take the same chord and move it up. Stay in the fret you're in and just move it up. And now your little finger has no place to go. Your bottom string is open. And that's also a set of chords that you can slide up and down the neck. Now that's the basis of the chords I use. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it. In fact, I absolutely know it's not the only way to do it. There's plenty of other ways to do it. But if you learn it this way, this is what's going to help you understand the Nashville number system and make it really, really simple to understand on the mandolin. You're going to believe that the Nashville number system was designed on a mandolin when we get done here because it's so easy. All right, so how is the Nashville number system going to improve your life? Well, what it does is it shows you patterns that you don't see any other way. And you say, well, there's patterns in your letters. Well, there are, but the problem with letters is every time you change keys, all of the letter names change. When you're thinking in terms of numbers, every time you change keys, the numbers all stay the same. And then all of a sudden you start to see these patterns. Now, we haven't talked about any of this yet in detail, but I just want to give you an example of what I'm talking about when I say a pattern. A pattern would be something like 145, 145, 145, and it just goes in a circle. And that would be a circular pattern. So you go from the 1 chord to the 4 chord to the 5 chord, back to the 1 to the 4 to the 5. And I know you don't really know what that means yet, but the point is you can see a pattern there, 145, 145, 145. Another pattern would be like 1415, 1415. I call that the pivot pattern because it's pivoting around the 1, 14, 15, 14, 15. So you bounce back and forth. You have those same patterns in letters. The problem is, like I said, every time you change keys, all of the letter names would change, and therefore you don't see the pattern. You just don't see it. It just doesn't come out to you. It just doesn't jump into your consciousness that it's a pattern. That's what makes understanding the Nashville number system so cool, is once you see these patterns, you might actually get bored playing music because you'll see the same patterns over and over and over and over. So that's the whole point of this. All right, so let's get started on the mandolin itself. For those of you who know the mandolin chords, this will be easy. For the rest of you, I'm going to try to go slow. Now, granted, this is the chord I'm talking about. But for our purposes this evening, you can concentrate just on these two fingers, just these two fingers, because that by itself is a G chord. See? And if I bring that up to the middle two strings, then you got a C chord. See? So it makes a chord wherever you put those two fingers down, anywhere you put them down on the mandolin, if you have a fret between them, like that, it will be a chord. Doesn't matter where you put them, anywhere. It's a chord. So that's the point of that, is just pay attention to these two fingers, and then we're going to start showing you where the chords are. Now, in order to understand the Nashville number system, it doesn't matter whether you're playing on a mandolin or a guitar or a banjo or whatever, you first have to understand your letter chords. You do have to know them. So, on the mandolin, I like to call G as the first chord up here because it's up at this end of the neck and it's kind of the first place to start. So there's G. You go 2 frets higher. 1, 2. There's A. 2 frets higher. There's B. And then just 1 more fret is C. Now, those of you who know a lot about music will know there's no flats and sharps between B and C, and that's why it's just 1 more fret. So you got your G, A, B, and then 1 fret more, C. Okay, now that's as far down the neck as I typically go, especially in training lessons. So that's all you really need to know anything about the neck right now. G, A, B, C. Now notice that's alphabetical. There's only 7 letters. If you thought of it as a circle, you go G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you just keep doing that circle. So if you just keep going down this neck, obviously in alphabetical order, you'll run into those other chords. So you got G, A, B, C, and if I went 2 more, that would be D, just like I was telling you, and then E. So you just keep going, see? So it's very simple on that part of the chording, okay? Now, if you move up to the middle 2 strings, then you start here right above your G as C. And if you remember what I just told you, there's no flats and sharps between C and B. So if you backed up, that's a B. See, right there. So B, C, and then you could go to D, then to E, and then 1 more fret is F. And again, in music, you should know that there's no flats and sharps between E and F, period. That's just the way music is. I didn't invent it. That's just the way it is. So there's where so that's all the chords that you have. You don't have any more. So you got G, A, B, C, C, D, E, F, okay? So it's important that you know that first. Hopefully you can see this well enough. And I do have plenty of light on this. I'm hoping it all shows up really good and it's coming through for you. It's probably breaking up out there because I know how live feeds are. So I apologize if that happens to be the case. Okay, so one more time, let's just recap what we just learned. We've got G, A, B, C. And then we got back here, we could even start at B, B, C, D, E, and then F. And of course, we could keep going down those 2 strings as well, and it would still be in alphabetical order going up, you know, until you get to the circle, you know. All right, so hopefully that makes sense to you. We got a lot of ground to cover, so I have to just keep moving. Hopefully once this video posts and you want to go back through this, obviously you should be able to play the video again and go back through any parts that aren't making sense to you and play them over and over. Okay, so that's the chords. Now, how could you relate this on a guitar? Well, I want to tell you that first, before I get into the guitar, let me just tell you that there are 2 patterns on the mandolin. 2 patterns, period. Once you learn these 2 patterns, you can play anything. Anything. And when I say anything, I'm talking about from the simplest 2-chord song to the most complex, maybe, you know, 7 or 8 chord song, you know. And when I say 8, there could be minors and sevenths and all these things, and there could be 12 or 15 chords, but you'll be able to play them very easily once you understand these 2 patterns. Okay, pattern number 1 is starting on these bottom 2 strings. So anytime you start on the bottom 2 strings, we're going to call that pattern 1. Okay? Anytime you start on the middle 2 strings, we're going to call that pattern 2. Just that simple, no more complicated than that. Pattern 1 and pattern 2. On the guitar, you can create these 2 patterns yourself by picking out the 2 keys that the 2 chords that you like to play music in. For me in a guitar, I'll just tell you what they are. One of them is G, the other one is C. So I would pick G and C as my 2 pattern chords if you want to call it that. Again, I'm making up terms here a little bit. But then you can take a capo and just slide down this neck, kind of like we're going to be doing on the mandolin, and just stay in G or C, calling G pattern 1 and C up here like we are doing pattern 2. Then you can play any song with those 2 chord patterns on the guitar once you understand the Nashville number system. At least you can chord it. Let me just say it that. By the way, we're not going to get into picking individual notes too much until the very, very end if we have time, and we might show a little bit of that, but only a little bit. All right, the next thing, now that you've kind of got the background kind of down a little bit, I want to point out that I have written the Nashville number system rules. Now, these are rules of thumb. These are rules that I personally made up. I never copied them from anybody. I just started noticing that these things occurred all the time when you're using the Nashville number system. And so they became rules. All right. We're not going to go through all 12 rules that I have written down here. We're going to pick out 6 or 7 of them and go through the most important ones. The rest of them you could learn if you wanted to buy my DVD system. Guys, I'm not doing this for free, and Mama didn't raise no fool. Obviously, I'm not trying to, give away the whole thing here, but I want to explain the most important parts. And you can decide yourself whether you think that you could learn more once you get the DVD set. Now, the DVD set, by the way, teaches you mandolin from scratch. It teaches you all the way from the beginning how to hold the pick, how to hold the mandolin. It teaches you all the way up through the most complicated Nashville number system song that you're going to play. Okay. I promise you that's all I'm going to say about the DVDs. I'm not here to sell DVDs necessarily. I'm just wanting to point out that I'm not going to go through everything about the Nashville number system that I do explain in the DVD. But we are going to go through the most important things that'll help you understand music. Okay, so just like letters, there's 7 letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There are 7 numbers, obviously. There's 1 through 7, period. Now, rule number 1 in the Nashville number system is just that there are 7 numbers and 7 letters, and they are in numerical order if you want to think of it that way. And they are in alphabetical order if you want to think about it that way as you go up and down the neck, see? So that the numbers are the same way. They're identical. So that's rule number 1, that everything is pretty much the same from one to the other. The biggest difference is the numbers always stay the same numbers where the letter names always change. And I'll show you how that works here in a minute. All right, rule number 2, very, very, very important rule, and this is one that everybody knows and that understands the Nashville number system. Everybody knows this, and that is the key you're playing in is always number 1. Okay? So, whatever key you decide to play the song in, if you decide to play the song in G, G is 1. If you decide to play the song in B, like boy, then B is 1. It doesn't matter what key you pick, that key is 1. And that's why the numbers never change, because right there, that ought to tell you that you're always starting with a 1 and everything else is relative back to the 1. So they always stay the same, the numbers do. And that's how you see the patterns that you start to see. All right. Now, rule number 2, or rule number 3, I should say, is that every single song in the whole universe has a skeleton. And for the most part, and I know some people out there are going to be throwing things at their screen going, that's not true. For the most part, every single song has a skeleton of 1, 4, 5. Now, there are some songs that don't even have 3 chords. They only have 2 chords. I understand that. But the root of pretty much any song you can find anywhere has a 1, 4, 5 as its skeleton, if you will. And a lot of songs are just purely 1, 4, 5. Now, what does 1, 4, 5 mean to you? Not one thing. I understand that. But I'm just telling you that's a rule that your numbers that you're going to find in a song are 1, 4, 5. Pretty much all songs have a 1, 4, 5. Not every song has a 4. Not every song has a 5, perhaps. But for the most part, it's 1, 4, 5. So you just kind of have to understand it. These rules of thumb are like 80-20 rules. 80% of the time, what I tell you is going to be is going to be correct. 20% of the time, some knucklehead out there wrote a song that doesn't work with these rules. And that's what everybody tries to do. They try to write a song that's different and unique and doesn't follow the rules, But for the most part, if you can guess 8 out of 10 times and be right, then you're doing some pretty good guessing. And that's kind of what these rules help you do, is guess better. That's really what they do. Okay, so we've talked about that there's 7 numbers and 7 letters. We've talked about that the key you're playing in is always 1. And we've also talked about the main skeleton of every song is 1, 4, 5. Now let's apply that and see what that looks like. It's easy peasy on the mandolin. It's easy peasy on the guitar if you just pick those 2 chords like I tell you and apply this to those 2 chords. Okay? So here, let's start with G, and let's say we're going to play a song in G. Now, I am going to go ahead and use all 4 fingers because it just sounds better, but you can concentrate just on these 2 fingers. If this is, too much for you, just concentrate on those 2 fingers. Okay? So there's G. So that's 1 because we're going to play the song in G. So G is automatically 1. Again, guys, try not to compare this to what you already know. Try to just learn it right here, right now, and this will help you, I guarantee you. All right, 1 is there, 4 is always. And what did you hear me say always? There's no exceptions. 4 is always straight above 1 on the mandolin when you're using these chords. Okay? So 1, 4, and 5 is always 2 more down. 5, period. Every time. That's when you're in the bottom pattern. That's when you're in the bottom 2 strings is pattern number 1, remember. So we're in pattern 1, and every time you start on the bottom 2 strings, doesn't matter where you start, we can pick anywhere. Pick right here. That's 1, 4 is right above it, and 5 is 2 down. See the pattern instantly? I mean, right away you see a pattern. You start to see patterns with numbers that you'll never see with letters. Never. You'll never see them with letters. 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. Okay? Especially when you get into the complicated patterns, and we're going to get into those here in a minute. So 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. Now see, there's that pattern I was telling you is a circle pattern. So here's a song with 1, 4, 5 just to demonstrate. There's a well-beaten path on this old mountainside where I wandered when I was a lad. 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, back to 1. Okay? All right, now let's go up to A, for instance. And we'll do the same thing. So there's a well, I just have to sing higher, that's all. There's a well-beaten path on this old mountainside where I wandered when I was a lad. See. 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, back to 1. Just a circle, just a circle. Doesn't matter. I could come all the way down here and do the same thing. Doesn't matter. It's just, there's your pattern. 1, 4, 2 down is 5. Just that simple. That simple. That will play you a million songs right there. Just a million. Maybe 1,000,001, who's counting? But it will play you a million songs. Seriously. 1, 4, 5. Just 1, 4, 5. Okay? Now, here's an example of a song that goes 1, 4, 1, 5. Oh, the love you promised to be mine forever. Well, I would have bet my bottom dollar on. See, there we went. 1, 1, 1, 1, 4. 1, 1, 1, 1, 5. 1, 1, 1, 1, 4. 1, 1, 5, back to 1. So there's a pattern. See it with just the 1, 4, 5. There's a second pattern. There's more or less an infinite number of patterns, but you have to add a lot more chords to them before you really start to see a whole lot of other more complicated patterns. But can you understand there, hopefully, how wonderful it is to start thinking in numbers? Because you see the patterns. And the patterns, you start to see them common as heck in all these songs when you start thinking in numbers. But you have to think in numbers. You can't go back and forth, letters and stuff. I don't even care what the rest of those letters are called. The only reason I care about what the letters are called is so I know where to start. And then after that, it's just the numbers are always in the same place. Always. And all 7 numbers are always in the same relative place from your 1. That's my whole theory about playing music, is everything is relative from where you start. That's the main point of the whole thing. Everything is relative from where you start. Keep that thought in your brain as we go through this, because everything moves exactly the same from the place you start once you understand what you're doing here with this Nashville number system. Okay, now let me digress and back up. The Nashville number system, for most people, here's how they do it. They just go, okay, G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, C is 4, which we've already just played with the C there, and D is 5, see? So they just go, they do it like this, and they count them this way. But that's far too complicated. So you got G, C, D, see? That's way too complicated to stop and think about it on your hand. Just think about it like it's a pattern. And the same way on your guitar, once you decide to use your 2 chords and make those 2 your patterns, you can move them up and down the neck. And I'm assuming that you're going to use G and C on your guitar and just move the capo up and down the neck to whatever chord you want to play in, and your 1, 4, 5 is going to be always the same. In your case on the guitar, it would be G, C, D, just like it is G, C, D on here. See? 1, 4, 5. And by the way, just so you know, it's alphabetical also. I mean, G happens to be the last letter or the last number. I said that wrong. G is the last letter of the chords, but then you notice the C is the 4 and the D is the 5. So it's alphabetical order with the numbers as well as it is with the letters. A lot to cover here in very little short time. So I'm trying to get a lot in here, guys. You can go back and review the video if I'm confusing you. All right, let's see. Okay, now, so what would be another chord that we would want to introduce? Let's talk about a 2 chord. Okay, so we've got our skeleton down. We know our skeleton is always, guys, 1, 4, 5. That's your skeleton. Now, like I said before, not every single song has all of the chords. They might not even have a 4. But generally speaking, 1, 4, 5 is still the skeleton of a song. Okay, generally speaking. I hope that makes sense to you. You may not always play a 4, you may not always play a 5, but generally speaking, in the whole world, every song skeleton sort of is a 1, 4, 5. Okay? But then there's still other chords. You still got a 2 that we haven't talked about, you've got a 3 that we haven't talked about, we've got a 6 that we haven't talked about, and a 7. So we're going to show you where those are, and they are always, again, in the same relative place from your 1. So in other words, all you got to do is count over a certain number of spaces, and you've got the number you're looking for. It's just that simple. And it's always that way. There are no exceptions, except when you run off the end of the fretboard or something. And obviously you're going to have to do something a little different when you run out of room at one end or the other. Other than that exception, which has to make sense, I hope, there's no exceptions. Okay? All right. So we've got our 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5. Now where's our 2? And what does a 2 do? Okay, well, the 2 is so unique that I actually made it a rule in my Nashville number systems. I call this the number 2 rule and the 2 chord rule, and that is the 2 chord does a couple of things. It lifts the song up and makes it sound like it's got a lot of power, and then After you go to a 2, where are you going to go after that? You're going to go to a 5. Now, you can't say that in letters. You can't say after a C, where are you going to go? Because you don't know. It could go anywhere. After an A, you don't know where you're going to go because it could go anywhere. Depends on the key you're playing in and what you're doing. But with the number system, when I say play a 2, where are you going to go? 8 out of 10 times, and I might even go as high as 9.5 out of 10 times, sometime on a lot of this stuff, you're going to go to a 5 in this case. And you go, how could that be? I don't know either. I didn't make up music. It's just how it works. Okay? And I didn't know this until I learned the numbers. Okay? I hope this is making sense. Now, I see people saying that it is making sense, so I hope it is. Okay? So let me give you an example of a 2 chord and how it lifts the song up and how it always goes to a 5. Now, before we do it though, remember where the 4 and the 5 are. There's your 1, there's your 4, and there's your 5. So now where would your 2 be? Well, it's just 2 notes higher than 1 because it's just numerical too. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's just that simple. It ain't harder than that. And no matter where you start, they're in the same relative place from where you start. Every time. No exceptions. That's what makes this easy. Okay, so let's do that song now and listen to the 2 and watch it lift the song up. It always lifts the song up and it always jumps to a 5. Okay, here we go. Along about roundup time in Texas, way out west, I lost a friend and a pal, boys, and I laid him down to rest. See how it lifts the song up and jumps up to the 5? It just does that. You can hear that sound on the radio and go, he just went from a 2 to a 5. Because it's a common sound. You can't tell what letter he is unless you have perfect pitch. And my brother happens to have perfect pitch. He could tell the letter, but I can't. I can hear the sound though and go, he just went from a 2 to a 5. Because that's the sound of a 2 to a 5. It always sounds that way. That's why it's a rule. You know, it's that simple. So listen again very carefully and listen to the sound of it lifting up and jumping up to the 5. And keep in mind, here's a 1. Along about roundup time in Texas, way out west, I lost a friend and a pal, boys, and I laid him down to rest. I wept and moaned all over the grave. To me, boys, it was sad. Down beneath that mound lay the best pal I ever had. Now, here's another part of the rule on the 2 chord rule. And that is, and this isn't 100%, just like none of the rules, well, most of the rules are not 100%. Almost always your 2 chord is in the first half of the verse, or the A part of the verse, if you will, and the B part of the verse, there's no 2 chord in the B part. Usually. That's not 100% true. You will find songs that don't follow that rule, but it's enough of a rule that I made it part of the rule because, again, if you can guess 8 out of 10 times correctly, you're doing some darn good guessing. So here we go again. One more time. Pay attention to that 2 chord again. Long about roundup time in Texas, way out west, I lost a friend and a pal, boys, and I laid him down to rest. Laid him down, there's your 2. Laid him down to rest, up to the 5. See? And you think, does it always do that? It does. It always does. Your 2 chord jumps from the 2 to the 5. Like I said, you'll find a few songs that there'll be an exception. But there's only a few. I mean, compared to the mass number of songs, you can pretty much bet when you go to that 2 chord, you're going to a 5 next. So just start heading there because that's where you're going. And then for the guitar players out there, that was G to C, back to G, and then we went to the A, and then up to the D. So it's 1, 4, 1, 2, 5 in that case. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, 4, 4, back to 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, up to 5. Make sense? 2s always do that. So now you got 4 of your 7 chords down. You just got them down. There's nothing more to know about them. That's how simple it is. That's why it's almost hard to explain this without getting too excited, because it's so cool. It's so simple compared to the other ways of learning music. This is a 5-minute job to learn this. I teach kids this all the time. 10-year-old kids is perfect. If you get them at 10 years old, their fingers and their brain is caught up to one another and they can do this. And in a month's time, people are coming back to me and they're going, where do you find these musical genius kids? Man, they just can play anything. And they just started. He just started a month ago. It's because they're thinking about it like this, and it's so simple. There's nothing more to think about. Okay, so now we've got 4 of the 7 numbers down. Let's get the rest of them down, or let me look at my notes here and see what I wanted to go to next. Okay, yeah, okay, I've covered that pretty well. All right, let's go on to minor chords and minor sounds, and how do they work into the numbers? And by the way, your 2 can be a minor, okay? It can be a minor, but that was, so like that was just a plain A, but if you made it an A minor, like by bringing your finger back. By the way, on your mandolin, it's a little difficult to do, but the easiest way for me to make a minor is to just bring the finger back 1 note, and now it's a minor. See, that A went to an A minor. Now your G could be a G minor by bringing that finger back. That's all you got to do. Now, yeah, and people say, how can you do that? That's hard to do. Well, it's getting your fingers at the right angle here. You don't do this. You don't do this, okay? You get your fingers, see how mine are at an angle here to the fretboard? And then you just slide it back. It's easy that way. But if you try to get them this way and spread them out, you can't do that. You just can't do it. So let this thing kind of rest across here. Put your fingers at an angle like this, and you're good. And that'll help you reach with the little finger up there too, by the way. All right, get back on track here, Jerry. Okay, I will. So, all right, back to 1, 4, 2, and 5, okay? Now let's learn about the minors, as I mentioned, okay? So the minors, the rule about the minors is how to know which minor it is. And I have several rules about this. I'm only going to talk to you about the first rule in the minor section, okay? And the first rule is because it's the most common one. And that is your most common minor is a 6 minor. Foggy Mountain Breakdown is a good example of, if you ever watch the Beverly Hillbillies, the Foggy Mountain Breakdown, or if you watch Bonnie and Clyde, the movie, the Foggy Mountain Breakdown was played through that. So anyway, it's listen to the Foggy Mountain Breakdown, and I'm just starting in at the 1 here at the G, and it's going to go to a 6 minor, which is, there's the 4, there's the 5, well, there's your 6. Oddly enough, it's just 2 more notes down. 4, 5, 6. Can you see it? 4, 5, 6. And then you bring this finger back to make it a minor. Just that simple. By the way, I didn't tell you this, and I meant to tell you this, and that is, for the most part, your middle finger, when you're dealing with straight chords, is going to be in a dotted fret. Just that simple. So like in G here, your middle finger is in this dotted fret. A, your middle finger is in the dotted fret. B, your middle finger is in the dotted fret. It changes when you go to the C because it's just 1 more fret more. Okay, same way up here. C up here, your C is in your middle finger is in the dotted fret. D, middle finger's in the dotted fret. E, your middle finger's in the dotted fret, and then finally 1 more is F. Okay, and it's not at that point. But that's the only place you run out of the dotted fret, see, for the most part. Now, if you're playing in flats and sharps, that's different. By the way, all of these rules apply when you're in flats and sharps, just like they do in regular chords. All of them do. Okay? All right, so get back to the minor, Jerry. All right, here we go. I think of these extra little things, and I know they would be helpful to a lot of people. That's why I'm bringing them in there. Okay, so we're in G. Now here's Beverly Hillbilly, or the Foggy Mountain Breakdown, and I'm just going to hum it. I'm not going to pick it. Going up to the 6 minor, back to 1, 1, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1. Now a 5, 5, 5, 5, back to 1. Now you notice that we didn't have a 4. So I still believe that 4 is part of that skeleton of that song. We're just not using it. It's kind of like it's a broken bone or something in the skeleton. But it's still there, in my opinion. And I think maybe somewhere in that song you might hit a 4 someplace. I'm not sure, but probably not. Anyway, so let's go back to and just hum that main melody again. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, 5, back to 5, now 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, 4, 5, 5, 1. I said the wrong thing there, 5. It was a 5, not a 4. Okay, now, how does that help you? Okay, you're often playing it with a group or somebody and you hear them hit a minor and you go, what is that off chord? You know, that's kind of the common question is, what is that off chord? All right, when you hear that sound, you know, the first place to go look is a 6 minor. Now, I will tell you, there are other minors, you know, a 2 minor is fairly common, a 3 minor is fairly common, but your 6 minor is your most common minor, period. So go there first, and then right away you're going to be right most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. So that's the first place to go look, is at your 6 minor. Doesn't matter what key you're playing this in, guys. Remember, you could be in G, E, F, doesn't matter, but go to where the 6 is, and then you will know where your minor is, see? That's how it helps you. And I know a lot of people out there already are trying to put in the more technical explanations. And that's fine, but you don't have to think that deep. It's just this simple. It's just this simple. You don't have to know all that background information. You don't have to know, all of that stuff that you learn in school. You don't have to know that. I don't know any of it. And I can play anything anybody throws at me. And I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you, it's just that simple. Okay, all right, so that's your minor. So if we were in A, okay, and if A was 1, see, we had G as 1, okay, remember? But let's move up to A, and let's do the same thing, and let's find that minor. So we got 1, 4, 5, and here would be my 6 minor, see? So it's in the same relative place from my 1, same exact relative place. So here, let's hum that in the higher key, and you'll see that it's exactly the same. 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, 5, 5, back to 1. It's just that simple. Okay, now we've learned 1, 4, 5, 2, and 6. We haven't learned 3, and we haven't learned 7. Okay? 7 isn't real common, but all 7 is just dropping down from wherever your 1 is. It's just dropping down 2 frets. So if 1 is at A, your 7 would just be down 2 notes lower. Every time, guys. There's no exceptions, period, 0, none. It's every time. So if you know where your 1 is, just drop down 2 frets, and you've got your, 7. Okay? Now, the only song I can think of off the top of my head right now with a 7 is Old Joe Clark, the instrumental. So it would be da da da. I got to get in the right key here for my voice. 1, 1 down to 7. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5 back to 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 down to 7. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5 back to 1. Okay? So 7's easy. It's always in the same relative place. If I was doing that in B, it would still just be 2 notes below where I started in B. Just that simple. You just got to learn these patterns. And now keep in mind, we're only talking about pattern 1 right now because we started on the bottom 2 strings on all of this. If we started in the middle 2 strings, the pattern would look different. So you do have to learn 2 patterns on the mandolin. You have to. But once you learn those 2 patterns, and keeping in mind that pattern 1 never changes, pattern 2 never changes, so it's not that tough. It's just learning those 2 patterns, then you can play anything. I don't care what anybody throws at you, you can play it. It's that simple. Okay. All right. Now the last rule, or wait a minute, we haven't talked about the 3 yet. Now, I actually make the 3 a rule also. I wasn't really going to go through it, but I kind of have to show you where the 3 is. So you're getting another rule here that I wasn't planning on talking about. But the 3, you know how I told you the 2 always lifts the song up and it always jumps to 5? Well, the 3 does something similar, except that the 3 is what I call, it's always the pretty sound. It's the pretty sound and it always jumps to 4. 3 always goes to 4, 2 always goes to 5. Once you know that, shoot, it's easy. It's pretty easy. Now, I'll just play you a little bit of a song here that has your 3 in it and jumps to 4. So we're at 1, we jump up to 3, and then we come to 4, okay? And you'll hear that pretty sound. Okay, now listen for that pretty, smooth, easy glide sound. That's when you'll know it's a 3 to a 4. So here we go. I'm going to play it in G, as G is 1, okay? Have you ever been to Richmond in November? Now we're going to 3. When the cold Virginia rain is pouring down. Just a slide. Listen to that. That 3 to 4. See, it's just so smooth. Have you ever been to Richmond in November? When the cold Virginia rain is pouring down. Well, my friends, I'm here to tell you that no pleasure. Now listen, we're going to 2. They're all alone and a stranger to this town. See how it lifted it up to the 5? That's a different song entirely. It still did the same thing. Okay? It always does that. Always. It's that simple. Don't make it more complicated than I'm showing you here, because it's that simple. You don't need to know more than this. If I get 10-year-old kids and teach them this, that's all they need to know. And they're gone. All you see is taillights leaving, because they've got it. They've got it. That's all you got to know, is know where these 7 chords are relative to 1 and what their sounds are. And see, now that's another thing. By the way, you know how people try to develop their ear? It's really hard to develop your ear with letters, thinking in letters. And the reason is because every time you change keys, those letters, all the letter names change, therefore you don't relate the same sound back to that particular letter. But the numbers never change. So that 2 always has that lifting sound. That 3 always has that smooth to 4 sound. It's that simple. And so you only got 7 sounds. How complicated can it be? It's just 7 sounds. It's that simple. Don't make it harder than that, please. It's that simple. I know people don't believe that it's that simple, but it is that simple. And then the only thing that complicates it after that is your 7ths and your minors. And of course, there's a lot of people way more advanced than me, and they've got diminished chords and 9ths and all that stuff, but who cares? They're musical geniuses and they can be out there in their own world and do their own thing. I'm not that way. I just want to play music and enjoy myself. So to me, just straight major chords, minor chords, and 7ths That's all I need. I can play pretty much anything you throw at me with those. And it's wonderful to know the other stuff. I'm not making little of people that know that other stuff. I wish I did. I'm just telling you, for the average person who can't get over the musical hump, this will get you over the musical hump and then some. All right. So let's see now. Okay, the last rule I wanted to talk to you about, because I think we've got all the numbers now. Okay, so let's just recap the numbers one time, and then we'll go through the last rule that I want to show you. Because the last rule I want to show you also demonstrates a certain pattern that you have in a lot of songs. Okay, all right, so here it is. If G is 1, so that's what we're calling G right now, is 1. So we got your 1. We go to A, which is 2 in this case. We go to B, which is 3. And if you remember, we went up here to get 3, but that's also a B. And then 4 is C. And then 5 is D. And then 6 is E. And then 7 would be F. But if you're at G and you drop down 2 frets, this is where you run out of fretboard. This is one of those exceptions I was telling you about. So you got your G here and you want to drop down 2 frets to get your 7. You can still do it, but notice that this finger has no place to go. It's just these 3 fingers. So you could do it like that. That would be your F. But I don't do it that way. I just switch. This is the one time I switch positions and I play like that. That's my F. See? So there's G, and I want to come down to a 7, so I just go down here, and I just switch my hand positions in that case, and I play my F like that, rather than slide down here and do it this way. Even though it's the same thing, you could do it either way you want to do it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Makes sense? I hope it does, because that's all there is to it. Nothing else. Now, since we're talking about this pattern, let me go ahead and before we get into pattern number 2, and we're not going to go deep into pattern number 2, I'm just going to show you a little bit of it. But while we're in this pattern, you've kind of got that in your head, let's talk about what people call a circle of fifths. Now, there's all kinds of technical musical explanations behind a circle of fifths. You're not going to get that from me. All I'm going to show you is what a circle of fifths is, and that's all you need to know. What is it, and how do I play it? And that's all you need to know, okay? And you will hear this in a lot of songs. And often, a circle of fifths is preceded by a 4. Like, for instance, in this part of this song, I think we both can remember when we were 2 little boys. That's a circle of fifths. Here goes to 4, 4, 4, 4, 1, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. That's a circle of fifths. It's just a pattern. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. That's all it is. Ain't nothing more than that. That's all it is. Sure, that's a little bit of a complicated pattern, but once you got it, you got it. 1, 4. So it's 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. Often it's preceded by a 4, like I was telling you. So like, here's the 4. I think we both can remember when we were 2 little boys. See? 1, 4, 4, 4, 4, 1, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. Period. That's all there is to a circle of fifths. That's it. That's all you need to know. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. Learn where that is, and you got it. And you can play it in any key. Because remember, as long as you're starting on these bottom 2 strings, that pattern is going to be exactly the same. It's just a little further down the neck or whatever. But it's the same pattern. No change at all. I hope that makes sense to you. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about here real quick we've just about ate up a full hour. So the last thing we're going to talk about real quick is the other pattern. Now this is on the mandolin, of course. This would be kind of like now you're switching to the C on the guitar and you're going to use the capo up and down the neck with the C. And so we're going to start right here. And by the way, whenever I move, let me just digress a little bit here. When I start in G, you don't need a capo, and you don't need the capo on the guitar, right? When I move up to A, you put your capo on 2 frets, and you're still playing G. Well, on the mandolin, if it helps you think about it this way, you can pretend like you've got a capo there, and you're still playing G, because that's all you're doing. You're just moving 2 frets down, see? And you could go up to your B then and move it up to your 4th fret, and now you got your capo here, see? And you're still playing a G. If that helps you think about it that way, great. I know some people do think about it like that, and when I first started, that's how I thought about it. So it is kind of helpful to understand it that way, because then, like as you were thinking about it here, G, C, D, G, C, D. If you thought about it down here and pretended there was a capo, that would be G, C, D, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5. It's the same thing. It's just 2 different ways to think about the same thing. Okay. All right. So that's how you could do this on the guitar. Hopefully that made sense. I'm sorry if I confused you. All right. Let's see. All right, the other pattern is, and we're going to, because of running out of room on the end of the neck here, I'm not going to start at the C, because we would run out of room going this way. There's a way to handle that, but I'm not going to get into that much detail tonight. So let's pretend like we're starting in D, which D is 1 then. So there's your 1. Now the pattern is reversed. Like if you wanted to think about this pattern as being counterclockwise, there's 1, 4, 5, back to 1, 4, 5, back to 1, 4, 5. That would be kind of counterclockwise. This pattern is clockwise. So your 1 is here at your D, your 4 is down here where the G is, and your 5 is right under the 4. Right under the 1. Gosh dang, I get numbers. Too many numbers to talk about here tonight. But so you're starting at 1. 1, 4, 5, back to 1. So your pattern is reversed. It's still an L shape, if you will, or it's still a triangle, if you will, but it's totally opposite. And all of your other numbers are still going to be relative back to your 1. So your 1 is D, and so let's start with that very first song we played. There's a I gotta get my voice in D. There's a well-beaten path on this old mountainside where I wandered when I was a lad. See, it's the same exact thing. So it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, back to 1. So that's that circle pattern, see? Just circles around. So now where would your 2 be from your 1? It's always 2 notes higher. That's part of your number 2 chord rule. So it's 2 notes higher. So there's your 2. So if we were playing that other song where it lifts the song up and goes down to the 5, so it'd be like this. Long about roundup time in Texas, way out west. I lost a friend and a pal, boys, and a 2 up to 5. See how it still has that same sound? Even though the letters have changed, the numbers didn't change. We're still going 2 to 5. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because this is where the payoff is. So it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, back to 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, up to 5. 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, back to 1. See, and so when you think of numbers, the sound is the same all the time with those particular numbers. You have the same sound all the time. That's what makes this simple. That's about all I can explain to you guys tonight. I know I've taken a full hour here to do it. I hope it's made sense to you. I hope you got something out of it. The full thing, of course, is explained in my DVD set or my download. You can actually just download it from my website. And I thank you for tuning in this evening. Looks like there's just under 200 of you tuned in out there is what it looks like. And so I hope you've enjoyed this and got something out of it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you'll give me a thumbs up. And please be kind. Thank you.